Let me tell you something about the day my entire life split in two, before and after. It was a Tuesday. Cold. The kind of cold that bites through your jacket and sits in your chest. I was standing outside a gas station on Decatur Street in Atlanta, phone pressed to my ear, stomach growling because I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. My name is Lucas Whitfield, 23 years old. And in that moment, I had exactly $1.47 in my pocket. But here's what nobody knew, not the man behind the counter eyeing me sideways, not the woman who clutched her purse tighter when I walked past. My grandfather's trust fund had activated at midnight. $8 million. Sitting in an account with my name on it. Untouched. I hadn't told a soul. Because 48 hours before that, I'd made a decision. I needed to know the truth about my family. The real truth. Not the version they performed at Thanksgiving. So I called my father. Austin Whitfield. The man who named me after himself like I was supposed to carry his legacy. I called him from a burner phone, voice low, standing in the same spot where I used to watch him pull up in his Escalade. Dad. It's me. Lucas. I'm outside. I got nothing. I just need $10 for food. Silence. Then his voice, flat as concrete. Lucas, I'm tired of your problems. Click. He hung up. And right there, something in me went completely, permanently quiet. You need to understand who Austin Whitfield is before you judge my next move. My father is a man built entirely from appearances. Everything he owns, the house in Cascade Heights, the Range Rover, the tailored suits, is a costume. A carefully maintained lie designed to make people believe he arrived instead of escaped. Escaped from poverty. Escaped from his own father. Escaped from responsibility. My grandfather, Clarence Edward Whitfield, built his wealth in commercial real estate starting in the 1970s. 1 strip mall. Then 3. Then a portfolio worth more than most people can count. He was quiet about it. Humble. Wore the same brown boots for 15 years. My father resented every second of that humility. Growing up, I watched Austin borrow money from Grandpa Clarence and call it investment. I watched him miss mortgage payments and blame the economy. I watched him stand at family dinners talking about my business when the business was failing and Grandpa was quietly covering the losses. But here's what broke me. I watched him do it to me too. When I was 17, I got accepted to Georgia Tech full academic scholarship. I told my father, thinking, hoping, he'd finally see me. He looked up from his phone and said, "Don't act like that makes you special." I almost didn't go. But Grandpa Clarence pulled me aside that same night. Sat me down in his study that smelled like cedar and old paper. He said, "Lucas, I've been watching you. And I've been watching him. When I'm gone, I need you to know the difference between a man who builds and a man who borrows." He handed me a sealed envelope. "Open this when you're ready to know who you really are." I opened it 6 weeks after he died. Grandpa Clarence died on a Thursday in March, 2 years before that cold Tuesday on Decatur Street. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and brutal. He went from healthy to gone in 4 months. At the funeral, my father cried louder than anyone. Hugged people he'd ignored for years. Talked about legacy and love into a church microphone while I sat in the front pew feeling absolutely hollow. Because I knew. I'd watched my father spend the last 2 months of Grandpa's life suddenly appearing. Cooking meals he didn't cook. Driving to appointments he never attended before. Laughing at old stories with an audience-ready smile. My Aunt Dolores, Grandpa's youngest daughter, leaned over to me during the repast and whispered, "He smells money, baby. Watch yourself." Dolores Whitfield was sharp like a razor and twice as dangerous. She'd spent 30 years as a corporate attorney in Chicago before retiring to Atlanta. She loved Grandpa fiercely and trusted Austin approximately 0%. 3 weeks after the funeral, I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and a business card for a man named Gerald Osei, estate attorney, with a single sentence beneath his name in Grandpa's handwriting. "Call him before your father does." I called Gerald the next morning. He met me at a coffee shop on Auburn Avenue. Tall man, Ghanaian descent, calm eyes, slim briefcase. He ordered nothing, opened the briefcase, and slid a single document across the table. "Your grandfather established this trust 12 years ago," Gerald said quietly. $8 million. It activates on your 23rd birthday, provided you meet 2 conditions. I stared at the number. "What conditions?" Gerald looked at me steadily. "That you never asked your father for money, and that you never told him about this meeting." My hands went cold. Grandpa Clarence had been watching for years. I sat across from Gerald Uche for 2 hours that morning on Auburn Avenue, reading every line of that trust document 3 times over. Grandpa Clarence hadn't been careless. This wasn't an accident or a last-minute decision. He'd established the trust when I was 11 years old, the same year my father borrowed $60,000 from him to expand a business that folded in 8 months without a single explanation. Gerald slid another document across the table. Bank statements. Transfers. Austin Whitfield's name appearing repeatedly over 17 years. Loans never repaid. Receipts never provided. "Your grandfather kept records of everything," Gerald said. "Every dollar your father took. Every promise made and broken." He never confronted Austin directly because he believed people reveal themselves given enough time and enough comfort. "He was testing him," I said quietly. "He was protecting you." I went home that night and sat in my apartment, a 1-bedroom in East Atlanta I shared with my college roommate, Darius Green, and I stared at the ceiling for hours. Darius was a mechanical engineering student from Macon. Solid. Loyal. The kind of friend who showed up without being asked. I didn't tell him about the trust. But I told him I was running low. That things were tight. Darius nodded, didn't push, and slid me a 20 from his own wallet without making it a moment. That told me everything about the difference between people. For the next 2 years, I lived carefully. Worked a delivery job. Took extra shifts. Kept my head down and my father at a comfortable distance, close enough for appearances, far enough to stay clean of his requests. Because I knew now. The trust had a clock. My 23rd birthday was coming. And I needed to know who my father really was before the money arrived. My 23rd birthday fell on a Sunday. I didn't celebrate. Darius offered to throw something together. His girlfriend Tanya made good food and kept good company, but I declined. Told him I needed the day quiet. He respected that without asking why, which is exactly why Darius Green is the kind of person worth keeping. At 12:01 a.m., my phone buzzed. Email from Gerald Uche. Trust activated. Funds transferred. Welcome, Lucas. $8,240,000. Sitting in an account at a private bank in Buckhead with my name as sole beneficiary. I read the email 4 times. Then I put my phone face down and went to sleep. Because something Grandpa Clarence wrote in that letter kept circling in my mind. He'd written, "Lucas, when the money arrives, don't let it change what you're about to learn. Find out who they are first. Then decide what you're willing to do with what you know. Find out who they are." So I designed a test. Not out of cruelty. Out of necessity. I stopped my delivery shifts. Told Darius I was taking a week off. Wore older clothes. Didn't answer emails. Spent 2 days barely eating, just to feel what it actually felt like to be desperate. And on Tuesday morning, 2 days after activation, I walked to Decatur Street, stood outside that gas station in the cold Atlanta air, pulled out a burner phone I'd bought for $12, and I called Austin Whitfield. I kept my voice low and honest. "Dad. It's me. Lucas. I'm outside. I got nothing. I just need $10 for food." He paused. And then he said, "Lucas, I'm tired of your problems." Click. I stood there in that cold. And I let myself feel every single second of it. After my father hung up, I didn't move for a long time. A woman walking past asked if I was okay. Middle-aged. Purple coat. Grocery bags on both arms. I told her I was fine. She reached into her purse and handed me a granola bar without breaking stride. A complete stranger. No hesitation. I held that granola bar in my hand and thought about Austin Whitfield in his Cascade Heights house, probably already back to scrolling his phone. Not wondering if I was eating. Not calling back. Not feeling anything that resembled guilt. Tired of your problems. I pulled out my real phone, the one with $8 million attached to it, and scrolled through our text history. The last 12 months told the whole story. My messages, checking in, asking about his health, sharing small wins. His messages, sporadic, surface level. And then, buried between 2 weeks of silence, a message I'd half forgotten. Lucas, if you come into any kind of money, let your old man know. We got a business opportunity that could be big for the family. Sent 3 months ago. My stomach turned. He knew about the trust. Not the details. But he knew something was coming. Grandpa Clarence must have mentioned Lucas in casual conversation years ago. And Austin, always calculating, had been running his own quiet math. The business opportunity. The sudden warmth at Grandpa's bedside. The way he'd said tired of your problems with no hesitation, like I was already a closed chapter he was ready to move past. I called Aunt Dolores. She picked up on the second ring. Baby, she said, before I could speak. I've been waiting for this call. Aunt Dolores Whitfield didn't ask me how I was. She asked me where I was and told me to come to her house in Collier Hills immediately. I arrived 40 minutes later. Her home was exactly what she was, precise, warm, no wasted space. Books organized by subject. Art on the walls that meant something. A woman who built herself from intention. She made me sit. Made me eat, real food, rice and chicken she'd had simmering. Watched me with those sharp eyes until I finished. Then she folded her hands and said, "Tell me what he did." I told her everything. The call. The hang-up. The text about the business opportunity. Her expression didn't change, which told me she wasn't surprised by any of it. Your grandfather, she began slowly, changed his will 4 times in the last decade. Every time Austin pulled something new, Clarence adjusted. Austin borrowed money and Clarence quietly moved it further from his reach. He spent 12 years building that trust specifically so your father couldn't touch it, influence it, or interfere with it. She paused. But here's what you don't know, Lucas. She reached into the drawer of her side table and produced a folder. Inside, a letter. My father's handwriting. He wrote to Clarence 6 months before he died. Asked him to remove you as primary beneficiary. Said you were irresponsible. A liability. Said he, Austin, should manage the estate for the benefit of the whole family. My vision went sharp. Grandpa never responded to the letter. He just gave Gerald Osei new instructions. Activate only if Lucas calls, asks for money, and Austin refuses. I blinked. The phone call, I whispered. Dolores nodded slowly. Baby, you just passed the final test your grandfather designed. I drove home from Dolores's house feeling like the ground kept shifting beneath my tires. Grandpa Clarence had anticipated everything. The letter. My father's maneuvering. Even the possibility that I might get comfortable and forget to look clearly at who Austin truly was. So he built a final trigger into the trust itself. Gerald confirmed it the next morning when I called from my apartment while Darius slept in the next room. If I had ever, at any point, accepted money from Austin or allowed him to influence my financial decisions, the trust would have dissolved into a community foundation. My father would have gotten nothing. But I would have gotten nothing either. Grandpa's final lesson: don't let a man's poison feel like protection. There's one more thing, Gerald said carefully. Your father has an attorney. A man named Desmond Pratt. He filed preliminary paperwork 2 weeks ago contesting the trust on grounds of undue influence, claiming your grandfather was mentally compromised in his final years. My jaw tightened. He filed before the trust even activated. He'd been preparing for some time. I stood up from the kitchen table. Walked to the window. Atlanta spread out below, highways, skyline, the slow morning crawl of ordinary life. My father had been building a legal case against me while simultaneously texting me about family business opportunities. The man had 2 faces so practiced, even I'd been fooled into thinking the warmer one was real. I thought about that purple coat woman. The granola bar. The instinct to help a stranger with no calculation behind it. Then I thought about Austin's voice on the phone. Tired of your problems. Gerald, I said. What do I need to do? Nothing dramatic, he replied. Just let him believe what he believes. For now. I told Darius on a Thursday evening. We were sitting on the apartment balcony, takeout containers between us, watching cars move on the street below. He was talking about a job offer in Houston and I was half listening, half calculating how much longer I could carry this secret alone. Then I just said it. I have $8 million. Darius turned his head slowly. Say that again. I told him everything. The trust. Gerald. Grandpa Clarence. The phone call to Austin. Delores. Desmond Pratt. He was quiet for a long time. Then, Lucas. That granola bar lady gave you food when you had $8 million in the bank. I wanted to feel it for real. You're either the most disciplined person I've ever met, he said, or you need serious help. He wasn't wrong on either count. But what Darius said next surprised me. He put down his fork and looked at me with complete seriousness. I need you to hear me clearly. Your father is going to find out the money is real. And when he does, he's not going to come at you with guilt, he's going to come at you with love. Manufactured love. He's going to remember every birthday and every sacrifice and is going to show up like he never hung up that phone. He leaned forward. Don't let him rewrite the story, Lucas. You were hungry. He hung up. 4 words. Simple and devastating. I looked at my phone. 3 missed calls from Austin's number. No voicemail. He was already trying. He showed up at my apartment door on a Saturday. I hadn't buzzed him up. Darius answered the intercom and looked at me for instruction. I said nothing. Darius buzzed him in. Austin Whitfield walked through my door wearing a fresh linen shirt, carrying a bag from a restaurant he knew I liked. He smiled wide, the audience-ready smile I'd watched him perfect in church pews and funeral homes. Lucas. My son. I looked at him for a moment and said nothing. He set the bag down. Looked around my apartment. Noticed the space, the books, the calm. You look good, he said. I've been worried about you. Have you? I feel terrible about that call, son. I was going through something. Business pressure. Your stepmother and it's been tense. I wasn't myself. I wasn't myself. The universal absolution. As if being yourself is only relevant when it benefits you. You said you were tired of my problems, I said. I was hungry, Dad. He crossed the room. Put a hand on my shoulder. I know. And I'm sorry. I want to make it right. Actually, I have an opportunity I've been wanting to talk to you about. Something we could build together, you and me. Real estate. Your grandfather would have wanted that. There it was. Less than 5 minutes. He'd pivoted from apology to pitch in under 5 minutes. Dad, I said quietly, did you file papers contesting Grandpa's trust? His hand lifted from my shoulder slowly. The smile didn't fall, but something behind it did. And that small fracture told me everything. The silence between us in that apartment stretched long enough to hurt. Austin recovered quickly, he always did. Practiced recovery was his most refined skill. Whoever told you that is confused, he said, voice even. Desmond was just asking questions. Preliminary. Nothing was filed against you. Against me. I tilted my head. I didn't say anything about filing against me. His jaw tightened. I know what you did, I said. I know about the letter you wrote Grandpa asking him to remove me. I know about the 17 years of borrowed money. And I know about the trust conditions, which I fulfilled, by the way. Completely. Austin sat down on my couch uninvited. Like the air had come out of him. Lucas. You hung up on me, I said. Not because you were overwhelmed. Not because of your marriage or business pressure. You hung up because you'd already calculated I had nothing to offer you. And a person with nothing to offer you isn't worth $10. He stared at the floor. But I didn't have nothing, I continued. I had everything. I had it when you hung up. I had it while you were driving here right now with restaurant food and a business pitch. And I've decided, completely, that you're not going to have access to any of it. Austin looked up. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw fear on my father's face. Not anger. Not calculation. Fear. Because he understood now. Not just that the money was real, but that I was. Son. You can leave the food, I said. I'm keeping that. Gerald Osei called me 2 days after Austin's visit. Desmond Pratt had withdrawn the legal contest. No explanation filed. Just gone. I asked Gerald why. Because I sent Desmond a copy of 17 years of your grandfather's financial records showing every dollar Austin borrowed, every broken promise, and every attempt to influence the estate, Gerald said. No attorney with a license they value pursues a case like that. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Gerald, did Grandpa know it would go this far? The attorney was quiet for a moment. Your grandfather told me something once. He said, Austin never learned the difference between inheritance and earning. I can't teach him that anymore. But maybe Lucas's life will. I thought about that for days. Dolores came over that weekend. Brought her daughter, my cousin Simone, a 20-year-old pre-med student at Spelman who had no idea any of this was happening. She was warm and funny and loud in the best way. And for a few hours the apartment felt like something I hadn't experienced in years. Family without performance. People in a room just being people. Darius cooked. Simone played music. Dolores told stories about Grandpa Clarence's early days, the first strip mall, the bad loan he almost took, the handshake deals with men who kept their word. I sat in the middle of it all and felt something settle in my chest. This was what Grandpa had been protecting. Not the money. This. The ability to build a table where people sat because they wanted to, not because they were calculating what the table was worth. My father doesn't know the exact number. He knows it's significant. He knows he can't touch it. And I've decided, at least for now, to let him keep believing I'm further away than I am. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. There's a difference between punishing someone and simply refusing to fund their patterns. I moved out of the East Atlanta apartment 2 months after that birthday. Bought a modest home in Decatur, nothing showy, 3 bedrooms, good light, a backyard Darius says I need to do something with. Darius took the job in Houston, but we talk every week. He sent me a plant for the new house. It's alive, somehow. Simone received a scholarship supplement from a private education foundation Gerald helped me establish. She doesn't know it's me. She thinks she won a merit award. Maybe someday I'll tell her. Dolores knows everything. She checks in like clockwork. And Austin? He texted me last month. No pitch this time. Just, I hope you're well, son. I read it 3 times. Put the phone down. Didn't respond. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. But the decision belongs to me, and that's the part he'll never understand. That the most valuable thing Grandpa Clarence left me wasn't the money. It was the proof that I could survive without the approval of someone who never deserved to give it. I stood in my backyard that evening. Atlanta sky going purple and gold. And I said out loud, to nobody and to Grandpa Clarence equally, I see the difference now. That was enough.